If you've ever driven an ambulance through the forests of Oregon after midnight, you know there are moments when the road feels completely abandoned. No traffic, no lights, only miles of wet asphalt and towering pine trees swallowing every sound. Back then, there were no GPS systems, no smartphones, no digital dispatch screens. Everything depended on radio communication, paper maps, and experience. My name is Thomas Walker. In 1988, I was 38 years old. I had already spent nearly 16 years driving ambulances across Western Oregon. By then, I transported hundreds of patients, gunshot victims, heart attacks, burn victims, car crashes, drug overdoses, even bodies from crime scenes. Nothing surprised me anymore. At least, that's what I believed. Until the night I accepted what looked like the easiest transport of my career. A transport that never reached its destination. The clock inside Mercy General Hospital read 2:11 a.m. Rain tapped softly against the garage doors. The night shift was unusually quiet. My partner, David Collins, was finishing paperwork while drinking coffee that had probably been sitting there since dinner. He looked exhausted. "So," he sighed, "think we'll finally get an easy night?" I laughed. "In this job, there are no easy nights." He grinned. "You say that every shift, and I'm always right." We both laughed. The radio remained silent for almost 20 minutes. That alone felt strange. Dispatch usually found something. Then, the speaker suddenly crackled. "Unit 12. David grabbed the microphone. "Unit 12, go ahead." Static. Then the dispatcher spoke. "County medical examiner requesting body transport." David rolled his eyes. "I told you, easy night." Body transports weren't emergencies. No sirens, no rushing, just paperwork. Pick up the deceased. Deliver them to the county morgue. Sign the forms. Go home. Most EMTs disliked those assignments. I actually preferred them. Dead people don't scream. They don't bleed. They don't stop breathing halfway through traffic. They simply stay quiet. Or at least, they're supposed to. Dispatch continued. Location: Henderson Residence. Outside Ashwood. I unfolded the county map. Ashwood was a tiny logging community nearly 45 minutes west of Portland. Mostly farmland, dense forest, very few houses. The dispatcher added one final detail. Victim. She paused, longer than normal, then quietly said, "Female, 9 years old." Neither David nor I spoke. The garage suddenly felt colder. Children were different. No matter how long you worked in emergency medicine, child calls never became normal. David slowly set down his coffee. "Cause?" The dispatcher answered. "Unknown." Another pause. "County sheriff is already on scene. Medical examiner has authorized transport." I exchanged a glance with David. Unknown cause? That usually meant investigators had already completed their initial examination. Our job wasn't to investigate, only transport. Still, something felt unusual. We climbed into Ambulance 12. It was a white 1986 Ford E-Series ambulance, powered by a loud diesel engine that rattled every window whenever it started. The heater barely worked. The suspension squeaked. The dashboard lights flickered whenever the windshield wipers ran too fast. She wasn't pretty, but she had never failed me. I started the engine. The familiar vibrations settled through the steering wheel. David unfolded the paperwork. Victim name: Emily Harper. Age: 9. Time declared: 1:28 a.m. Next of kin: confidential. Cause of death: pending investigation. That last line bothered me. Normally there would at least be something. Accidental, medical, drowning, trauma, anything. This report was almost empty. The rain grew heavier as we left Portland. Streetlights disappeared one by one. Soon, only the headlights cut through endless darkness. David turned on the radio. Classic rock. Low volume. We talked about football, about overtime pay, about how badly the Trailblazers were playing that season. Anything except the little girl. Neither of us wanted to imagine what waited at the end of that road. 40 minutes later, we saw the sheriff's patrol car. Its red and blue lights flashed silently through the rain. A narrow dirt driveway disappeared into the woods. At the end stood a small white farmhouse. Every light inside was on. Several deputies waited outside. No one spoke as we parked. Sheriff Raymond Harris approached. Late 50s, heavy coat soaked by rain. He handed me the paperwork. "You boys taking her to Multnomah County Morgue?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. His expression never changed. Then he quietly added, "Don't open the body bag." David frowned. "We never do." The sheriff looked directly into my eyes. "No, you don't understand. Don't open it." For a moment, I thought he was joking. He wasn't. A deputy led us inside. The house was painfully quiet. No crying, no shouting, just silence. The living room smelled faintly of old wood and wet soil. A family photograph hung above the fireplace. Mother, father, little girl, all smiling. The deputy quickly turned the picture face down, as though he didn't want anyone looking at it. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't going to be an ordinary transport. And by sunrise, both David and I would wish we had never answered that call. The deputy stopped outside a bedroom. The door was half open. Yellow crime scene tape hung loosely across the frame. Inside, two investigators quietly packed their equipment. Camera, evidence bags, fingerprint powder. One of them nodded as we entered. The medical examiner already signed off. David quietly asked, "Parents?" The investigator didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the hallway. "They're downstairs." Neither of us asked another question. The bedroom looked exactly like any other little girl's room. Pink wallpaper, a stuffed rabbit sitting on the bed, coloring books scattered across the floor, a tiny pair of white sneakers neatly placed beside the closet. Everything looked normal, except the room was unnaturally cold. I checked the window, closed, the heater vent, working, yet every breath came out in a faint mist. David whispered, "You feel that?" I nodded. "Yeah." Near the window, the body lay inside a black transport bag, already zipped, already tagged. A sheriff's evidence label rested on top. Harper, Emily. Case number 88 to 4176. Time removed. Pending transport. I bent down to grab one side of the stretcher. The moment my hand touched the body bag, I frowned. It wasn't cold. Bodies were always cold after several hours. This one felt warm, not hot, just body temperature. I immediately pulled my hand away. David noticed. "What?" "Nothing." I didn't want to sound ridiculous. Maybe the room was warmer than I thought. Maybe the thick plastic insulated the temperature. There had to be an explanation. We carefully transferred the body onto our wheeled stretcher. Felt surprisingly light. Too light. David checked the paperwork again. 9 years old. Guess that's why. Still, something felt off. Children that age usually weighed around 60 pounds. This felt like half that, as though the bag was almost empty. Before leaving, I glanced one last time around the room. My eyes stopped on the bedroom wall, just above the bed. Someone had written something in blue crayon. At first, I assumed it was childish doodling. Then I realized it wasn't. It was a sentence, written over and over. "He doesn't like the dark." Again, and again, and again, dozens of times. Every line written with the same careful handwriting. David followed my gaze. "What the hell?" The investigator quietly walked over. He looked at the wall for a moment, then covered the writing with an evidence sheet. "You didn't see anything." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means leave it in this house." As we wheeled the stretcher through the hallway, a woman suddenly appeared, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket. She couldn't have been older than 35. Emily's mother. Her face looked empty, not from crying, from shock. She slowly approached the stretcher. A deputy gently tried to stop her. She ignored him. She placed one trembling hand on the body bag, then looked directly at me. Her voice was barely audible. "Please, if she talks, don't answer." Silence. David blinked. "I'm sorry," the woman repeated herself, slower this time. "If she talks, don't answer her." A deputy quickly led her away. She never looked back. Outside, the rain had become a storm. Wind pushed against the ambulance doors. Lightning flashed across the forest. We loaded the stretcher into the rear compartment, locked it into place, closed both rear doors. Routine. Everything felt routine. At least, we kept pretending it did. David climbed into the passenger seat. I started the engine. The dispatcher confirmed our destination. Multnomah County Morgue. Estimated travel time, 1 hour. I shifted into drive. The tires rolled slowly down the muddy driveway. Neither of us spoke. The farmhouse disappeared behind the trees. After several minutes, David finally broke the silence. "You believe what the mother said?" I kept my eyes on the road. "People say strange things after losing a child." He nodded. "Yeah." Another long silence. Then, a loud metallic bang erupted from the rear compartment. Both of us jumped. David immediately turned around. What was that? Probably the stretcher shifting. The roads were rough. It happened all the time. I tried to convince myself. Then, another bang. Harder, as though someone had kicked the inside of the ambulance. David reached for the sliding window separating the cab from the rear compartment. He looked through the small glass panel. The stretcher hadn't moved. The body bag remained exactly where we had secured it. He slowly sat back down. Maybe it hit a bump. I nodded. Neither of us believed it. The rain became heavier. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up. Then, without warning, the ambulance radio turned on by itself. Static filled the cab. David frowned. I turned that off. The static grew louder. Then, a young girl's voice whispered through the speaker, very softly, almost impossible to hear. "Are we there yet?" David and I froze. The voice disappeared. The radio returned to static. Neither of us moved. Finally, David whispered, "Tell me you heard that." I kept both hands on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding. Outside, the road ahead vanished beneath sheets of rain. Behind us, something gently tapped. Once, from inside the rear compartment, the tapping stopped. Silence filled the ambulance once again. Neither Thomas nor David spoke. The only sounds were the diesel engine, the windshield wipers, rain hammering against the roof. Thomas kept his eyes fixed on the highway. He had transported hundreds of bodies. Sometimes, roads were rough, stretchers shifted, loose equipment rattled. There was always a logical explanation. There had to be one now. David finally forced himself to laugh. "Electrical interference." Thomas glanced at him. "What?" "The radio. Probably picking up another frequency." Thomas nodded. It sounded reasonable. Oregon's mountains often interfered with emergency radios. Static, random voices, police chatter, truck drivers. It happened. Just not children's voices. They reached Highway 26. The forest grew thicker. The nearest town was over 20 miles away. The road stretched endlessly between walls of pine trees. No houses, no gas stations, no traffic, nothing. Thomas looked at the dashboard clock. 2:58 a.m. Only 35 more minutes. Then this strange night would finally be over. A loud beep interrupted his thoughts. David looked down. The fuel gauge. Thomas frowned. Impossible. When they'd left Mercy General, the tank had been nearly full. Now, it showed barely half. David tapped the glass. Gauges acting up. Thomas didn't answer. The ambulance had been serviced 3 days earlier. The fuel gauge had never failed before. Another mile passed, then another. The road remained completely empty until headlights appeared ahead. An old pickup truck. It drove unusually slowly, around 20 miles per hour. Thomas sighed. "Come on." He flashed his headlights. No response. The truck continued crawling down the center of the road. David leaned forward. Maybe he's drunk. Thomas reached for the siren switch. One short blast. Nothing. The truck never reacted. Not even slightly. As they drew closer, Thomas noticed something strange. There was no license plate, no bumper, no rear window, just darkness, as though the back half of the truck didn't exist. Thomas slowed. "Do you see that?" David leaned closer. "Yeah." The pickup suddenly turned left, into the forest. There was no road, no driveway, no opening between the trees. Simply disappeared. Thomas immediately hit the brakes. The ambulance stopped. Both men stared toward the woods. Nothing, only rain. David whispered, "What the hell?" Thomas put the ambulance back into gear. Neither of them mentioned it again. 3 minutes later, the radio crackled once more. Dispatch called. "Unit 12. David grabbed the microphone with obvious relief. "Unit 12 receiving. Static." Then the dispatcher's voice. "Status check." David answered. "Transport in progress. Approximately 30 minutes out." Pause. Then the dispatcher replied, "Negative." David frowned. "What do you mean negative?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "Unit 12. According to your signal, you're still at the Henderson residence." Silence. Thomas slowly looked at the dashboard. The speedometer read 55 miles per hour. They had been driving nearly 40 minutes. David laughed nervously. "Our radio beacon must be malfunctioning." The dispatcher sounded confused. "Your GPS transmitter hasn't moved." Thomas quietly muttered, "GPS." David looked at him. "It's the county tracking beacon, not satellite GPS. Just a primitive radio location system some counties had started testing in the late 1980s. It wasn't very accurate, but it should at least show movement." Dispatch continued. "Can you confirm you've departed?" David answered, "Affirmative. We left almost 40 minutes ago." Another long silence. Then, the dispatcher spoke more quietly. "Copy that. Drive safely." The radio went dead. Thomas felt something cold crawl across the back of his neck. He checked the rearview mirror. Nothing. Only darkness behind the ambulance. Then, for less than a second, he saw someone sitting upright on the stretcher. Small, long dark hair, head lowered. Before he could react, lightning flashed. The rear compartment was empty again. Thomas gripped the steering wheel tighter. He said nothing. They passed a highway sign. Mile 47. David looked out the window. "I thought we already passed this." Thomas glanced at the sign. His stomach tightened. He remembered it. A rusted guardrail. A broken reflector. A dead pine tree beside the road. Exactly the same. 5 minutes earlier, they had driven past this exact place. Thomas slowly eased off the accelerator. "No!" David unfolded the paper map. "We've been driving straight. There aren't any loops." Neither man could explain it. Then, a child's voice echoed softly from the rear compartment. Not through the radio. Not through the speakers. Inside the ambulance itself. Clear. Gentle. Barely louder than a whisper. "We're going the wrong way." Both men froze. The voice continued. "Daddy never takes this road." David slowly turned toward the sliding window. His face had gone completely pale. Thomas whispered, "Don't." David ignored him. He unlocked the small window separating the cab from the rear compartment. Very slowly, he slid it open. Cold air poured into the cab. The lights in the back flickered. The stretcher remained locked in place. The black body bag hadn't moved. David let out a shaky breath. "See? Nobody's." He stopped speaking. Thomas looked over. David was staring at something. Not the stretcher. The ceiling. Thomas followed his gaze. Above the stretcher, tiny wet footprints, bare footprints, were slowly appearing across the ambulance ceiling. One after another, as though an invisible child was quietly walking upside down, toward the driver's cab. Thomas slammed the sliding window shut. The loud click echoed through the cab. Neither man spoke. The tiny wet footprints continued appearing, one after another, across the ceiling, until they reached the metal wall separating the rear compartment from the driver's cab. Then, they stopped, as though whoever had been walking was now standing directly behind them, listening, waiting. David slowly wiped sweat from his forehead. "We're turning around." Thomas nodded immediately. No argument. He slowed the ambulance, made a careful U-turn on the empty highway. The tires splashed through rainwater. Now, they were driving back toward the Henderson farmhouse. If something was wrong, they would return the body, let the sheriff's department deal with it. That sounded like the only reasonable decision. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Neither of them recognized the road anymore. Thomas frowned. "This isn't right." David looked at the map again. "We should have reached the farmhouse by now." Instead, the forest only became thicker, the road narrower. No intersections, no houses, no signs, nothing. It was as if Highway 26 had simply forgotten where it led. Suddenly, the ambulance headlights flickered. Once, twice. Then the dashboard lights dimmed. David stared at the battery gauge. "It's dropping. Impossible." The alternator had been replaced only 2 weeks earlier. The engine sounded healthy, yet every electrical system inside the ambulance began losing power. The radio died. The heater stopped blowing. Even the windshield wipers slowed. Outside, rain continued pouring. Thomas whispered, "Come on. Don't do this now." Then, the dome light inside the rear compartment switched on by itself. Neither man had touched the controls. Through the small rearview mirror, Thomas could now see the black body bag more clearly. It hadn't moved, but something beside it had. A small stuffed rabbit, white, one ear folded down. Thomas immediately recognized it. It had been sitting on Emily's bed. Neither of them had packed it. David noticed it too. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Thomas didn't answer, because he already knew. The rabbit hadn't been inside the ambulance when they left. Now, it was sitting neatly beside the stretcher, as though someone had carefully placed it there. The ambulance suddenly lurched. The steering wheel jerked violently. Thomas fought to keep control. What the? The left front tire wasn't flat. The road wasn't damaged. Felt like something underneath the ambulance had grabbed it. For 2 terrifying seconds, the vehicle refused to move forward. Then, whatever held it, let go. The ambulance surged ahead. David quietly whispered, "Thomas." "What?" "Don't look in the mirror." Thomas did anyway. The rearview mirror reflected the rear compartment, the stretcher, the body bag, the stuffed rabbit, and a little girl sitting calmly beside the stretcher. She couldn't have been older than 9. Long blonde hair, white nightgown, bare feet, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wasn't looking at Thomas. She wasn't looking at David. She was simply staring out the rear windows, watching the rain. Thomas's entire body went cold. He blinked. The seat was empty again. Only the rabbit remained. David swallowed hard. "You saw her too?" Thomas nodded once. Neither man needed to describe what they'd seen. They had both seen the same child, which meant it wasn't imagination. The ambulance radio suddenly came back to life. Not with static. Music. An old lullaby. Soft. Crackling. As though it were playing from an old vinyl record. The song echoed gently through the cab. David stared at the radio. "We don't even have a cassette player." The lullaby stopped. A child's voice quietly replaced it. "Can you take me home?" Thomas closed his eyes for a brief second, then remembered Emily's mother. "If she talks, don't answer." He tightened both hands around the steering wheel. Neither man responded. The silence lasted almost a full minute. Then, the little voice whispered again. This time, sadder. "Please, I'm cold." David instinctively opened his mouth. Thomas immediately grabbed his arm. Hard. "No." David looked confused. "She's just a..." Thomas cut him off. "No, you heard her mother. We don't answer." David slowly closed his mouth. The voice disappeared. For several miles, nothing happened. Only rain, only darkness, only the constant growl of the diesel engine. Then, without warning, a bright pair of headlights appeared directly ahead. A sheriff's patrol car, parked sideways across the road. Its emergency lights flashed silently. Thomas slammed the brakes. The ambulance stopped just a few feet away. Sheriff Raymond Harris stepped out into the rain. Exactly the same coat, exactly the same hat, exactly the same expression. Thomas immediately rolled down the window. "Thank God. We've been trying to get back." The sheriff slowly walked toward the driver's side. Rain soaked his uniform. He didn't seem to notice. He leaned toward the open window, then quietly asked, "Did she speak to you?" Thomas hesitated. "No," the sheriff smiled. For the first time that night. But something about that smile was wrong. Too wide, too still, almost painted onto his face. Then Thomas noticed something far worse. The sheriff's patrol car had no tire tracks behind it. It hadn't driven there. It was simply standing in the middle of the road, as though it had appeared out of nowhere. Thomas never answered. He simply stared at Sheriff Raymond Harris. Rain continued falling between them. The sheriff waited patiently, almost too patiently. Then he asked again, his voice softer this time. "Did she speak to you?" Thomas slowly nodded. "She tried." The sheriff's smile disappeared. For several seconds, neither man moved. Finally, the sheriff leaned closer to the open window. His face remained expressionless. Then he quietly whispered, "Good." David frowned. "Good." The sheriff nodded. "That means she still trusts you." Thomas felt something tighten inside his chest. "What are you talking about?" The sheriff looked toward the rear compartment, not at the body bag, at something beside it, something Thomas couldn't see. Then he said something that made no sense. "Don't let the man in black inside." David exchanged a confused glance with Thomas. "What man?" The sheriff slowly stepped backward. Without another word, he returned to his patrol car. The flashing lights stopped. Everything went dark. Thomas blinked. The patrol car was gone. The road ahead was empty. No headlights, no tire tracks, nothing, only rain. David whispered, "Thomas, did we both?" Thomas interrupted. "Yes, we both saw him." Neither man spoke for nearly 5 minutes. Thomas drove in complete silence. His hands refused to stop shaking. Finally, David opened the incident folder again. "I want to see the sheriff's signature." He flipped through the transport paperwork, then stopped. His face turned pale. "What?" David slowly handed him the first page. At the bottom, the signature read, "Deputy Michael Owens, not Sheriff Harris." Thomas frowned. "That's impossible." "We spoke to Harris." David kept turning pages. Every report listed the same thing. Deputy Owens, Deputy Carter, Detective Lewis. No Sheriff Harris. Not once. Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. David reached for the county directory stored beneath the dashboard. Every ambulance carried one. Phone numbers, emergency contacts, sheriff's departments, hospitals, fire stations. He flipped to Washington County Sheriff's Office. There it was. Sheriff Raymond Harris. Status: deceased. Date of death: March 14th, 1986. Heart attack. Thomas stared silently. The book slipped from his hands. Sheriff Harris had been dead for more than 2 years. Neither man noticed. The rear compartment light had turned off again, until something softly knocked 3 times from inside the body bag. Knock, knock, knock. David looked toward the back. "No." Thomas immediately shook his head. "We're not opening it." Another knock. This time, softer, almost polite. Then, a tiny voice, barely audible. "Mr. Walker." Thomas's heart stopped. David slowly turned toward him. "She She knows your name." Thomas had never spoken his name aloud that night. Neither had David. Neither had Dispatch. The little girl shouldn't know who he was. The voice came again. "Please. He's outside." Thomas looked into the rearview mirror. Nothing. Only darkness. The voice continued. "Don't stop. He's following us." Without warning, the ambulance engine died. Complete silence. The headlights went black. The dashboard lights disappeared. Everything shut off at once. The ambulance rolled silently until it stopped in the middle of the highway. Rain hammered against the windshield. Darkness surrounded them. David whispered, "No! No!" Thomas turned the ignition. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The battery wasn't dead. There wasn't even a clicking sound. It was as though the engine no longer existed. Then, footsteps. Crunch. 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 Someone was walking toward the ambulance. Outside. Slowly. Through the rain. Neither man could see anything beyond the windshield. Only darkness. The footsteps stopped directly beside the driver's door. Someone, or something, was standing inches away, watching them. No breathing. No movement. Just waiting. David slowly whispered, "Don't look." Thomas already was. A pale hand, slowly pressed against the driver's side window. Long fingers, gray skin, water dripping from every fingertip. Then, another hand appeared beside it. Then another. Then another. Hands began covering every window of the ambulance. Dozens of them. Small hands, large hands, old hands, children's hands. As though an entire crowd surrounded the vehicle, silently begging to come inside. David's breathing became rapid. "Oh God! Oh God!" Thomas couldn't move. Then, one final hand appeared. Tiny, a little girl's hand. Unlike the others, it wasn't outside. It slowly pressed against the inside of the rear compartment window. Emily was no longer lying on the stretcher. She was standing behind them, very quietly, looking straight at Thomas. And for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't an evil smile. It was the smile of a frightened child who had finally found someone willing to listen. Thomas couldn't breathe. Emily stood inside the rear compartment, perfectly still. The ambulance remained completely dark. Only occasional flashes of lightning illuminated her small figure. She wasn't transparent. She wasn't glowing. She looked real, almost painfully real. Her long blonde hair hung wet across her shoulders. Her white nightgown looked muddy around the bottom. She hugged the little stuffed rabbit against her chest. And she continued smiling, not because she was happy, because she finally wasn't alone anymore. David slowly whispered, "Thomas, don't turn around." Thomas never answered. He couldn't, because Emily was looking directly into the rearview mirror. At him, not blinking, not moving, just watching. Then, she quietly raised one finger, placed it over her lips, as if asking them to stay silent. At that exact moment, the dozens of hands covering the ambulance windows disappeared. Every single one. Gone. Only rain remained. Emily slowly lowered her hand. Then she looked toward the driver's side window, toward the darkness outside. Her smile vanished. Fear replaced it. Real fear. She quietly mouthed two words. "He's here." Before Thomas could react. Bang! Something slammed against the driver's side of the ambulance so hard the entire vehicle rocked. David shouted, "What was that?" Another impact. This time against the rear doors. Metal groaned. The ambulance shook violently. Then, everything became silent again. Thomas instinctively reached for the flashlight mounted beneath the dashboard. It barely worked. The batteries were almost dead. Still, he pointed it toward the driver's window. Nothing. Only rain. Only trees. No person. No animal. No vehicle. Nothing capable of striking a 6-ton ambulance with that kind of force. The radio suddenly crackled back to life. Not dispatch. Static. Heavy. Violent. Then, a man's voice. Deep. Slow. Almost impossible to understand. It sounded wrong. as though several voices were speaking at once. Open. Static. Static again. Door. David immediately ripped the radio cord from the dashboard. The speaker went silent. 5 seconds later, the voice returned, this time from the rear compartment, not electronically, physically, as if someone stood behind the rear doors, whispering through the metal. Open the door. Emily immediately backed away from the doors, her face filled with panic. She shook her head violently. No! Although she never made a sound, only mouthed the word. Thomas remembered Sheriff Harris. Don't let the man in black inside. For the first time, he realized the warning hadn't been about Emily. It had been about something else. The rear doors suddenly rattled. Someone was trying the handles. Slowly, methodically, click, click, click. Every lock moved, as though invisible fingers tested each one. David grabbed the flashlight. I'll check. Thomas instantly grabbed his arm. No! We stay inside. David stared at him. We're sitting in a dead ambulance. Thomas answered, and we're still alive. The two men locked eyes. David slowly nodded. He understood. Whatever waited outside wanted them to leave the vehicle. Then Emily did something unexpected. She stepped closer to the cab. Very slowly, she stopped beside the sliding window. Thomas could finally see her clearly. She looked exactly 9 years old. Tiny freckles. For the first time, she actually spoke. Not inside their heads. Not through the radio. With her own voice. Soft. Gentle. Like any frightened little girl. Don't stop driving. Thomas immediately shifted into gear. The ambulance accelerated. Behind them, something screamed. Not human. Not animal. A deep, endless roar echoed through the forest. The rearview mirror briefly showed a tall figure standing in the middle of the highway, at least 7 feet tall, completely dressed in black, its face hidden beneath an old funeral hat. His arms, far too long, they almost reached the ground, and despite the ambulance pulling away, the figure never became smaller, simply stayed the same distance behind them, walking, one slow step at a time, without ever running, without ever stopping, as though it already knew they couldn't escape forever. The diesel engine screamed as Thomas pushed the old Ford ambulance harder than he ever had before. 60, 70, almost 80 miles an hour. Rain exploded across the windshield. The tires floated dangerously over standing water. But Thomas refused to slow down, because every few seconds, he glanced into the mirror, and every single time, the man in black was still there, walking, never running, never changing pace, yet somehow, always exactly the same distance behind the ambulance. David looked back through the rear window. That's impossible. Thomas didn't answer. He already knew. Nothing about tonight obeyed the laws of nature anymore. Emily remained standing beside the stretcher. She wasn't looking at the man. She wasn't even looking outside. She was staring at the floor, as if she already knew exactly what was following them. After several seconds, she quietly whispered, "He likes people who stop." Thomas finally spoke. "What is he?" Emily slowly looked up. For the first time, real terror filled her blue eyes. She shook her head. "I don't know. Nobody ever comes back." David turned around. "What do you mean?" Emily answered without hesitation. "He waits beside roads. When people stop, they disappear." Her tiny voice remained completely calm, almost as if she'd repeated those words many times before. The radio suddenly burst into static again. Dispatch finally returned. "Unit 12. David nearly grabbed the microphone. "This is Unit 12. We need assistance." Static. Then, "Repeat your location." David looked through the windshield. The next green highway sign appeared. "Mile 66. He answered immediately. "Highway 26. Mile marker 66. Several seconds passed. Then dispatch quietly replied. "Negative." David frowned. "What?" There has never been a mile marker 66 on Highway 26. Silence. Thomas slowly lifted his foot from the accelerator. The sign disappeared behind them. David stared through the rear window. It's gone. Thomas looked in the mirror. The highway behind them was empty. There was no sign, no marker, only endless pavement, as though mile 66 had never existed. Emily suddenly grabbed her rabbit tightly. They're coming. Thomas felt every muscle in his body tighten. Who? She looked toward the trees. The people who listened. Before Thomas could ask what she meant, shapes began appearing between the pines. First, only one, then three, then dozens. People, standing perfectly still. Men, women, children, old people, young people, every one of them soaking wet, every one of them staring toward the ambulance. None of them moved, none of them blinked. Their clothes looked decades old. Some wore clothes from the 1950s. Some looked like hikers. Others looked like police officers. One even wore an old paramedic uniform. Thomas stared in disbelief. There had to be more than 50 of them, standing silently between the trees, watching. David whispered, "They're not following us. They're watching him." Thomas glanced into the rearview mirror. The man in black still walked down the center of the highway. None of the figures in the forest looked at the ambulance. Every single pair of eyes remained fixed on him, as though they were terrified. Then, all of them slowly raised one hand, not waving, pointing toward the road ahead. Emily suddenly gasped. "No!" Thomas looked forward. A fallen pine tree blocked the entire highway, only 50 yards away. He slammed both feet onto the brakes. The ambulance skidded violently. Water sprayed across the windshield. The rear compartment shook so hard the stretcher nearly broke loose. The vehicle finally stopped, less than 6 feet from the enormous tree trunk. David's breathing became frantic. "We would have died." Thomas gripped the steering wheel. He hadn't seen the tree until the very last second. It was simply there. Emily quietly pointed toward the passenger window. David turned. A narrow dirt logging road disappeared into the woods. There hadn't been a turnoff a second earlier. Thomas was sure of it. Emily softly said, "Go." Thomas hesitated. That road wasn't on the map. It looked abandoned, barely wide enough for the ambulance. Still, the tree blocked the only highway. He had no choice. He turned the wheel. The ambulance bounced violently onto the muddy logging trail. Branches scraped both sides of the vehicle. Rain continued pounding the roof. Within seconds, Highway 26 disappeared behind the trees. After nearly 10 minutes, the forest suddenly became quiet. No wind, no rain hitting the roof. Nothing. Thomas frowned. He looked through the windshield. The rain had stopped completely. Yet, when he looked in the mirrors, it was still raining behind them. A solid wall of rain stood only 100 feet away, as though they had driven through an invisible doorway. David quietly whispered, "Thomas, I don't think we're in Oregon anymore." Thomas didn't answer, because deep inside, he had begun to fear exactly the same thing. Behind them, the wall of rain slowly closed, like a curtain, completely hiding the road they had just traveled. There was no way back, only the narrow forest trail stretching deeper into absolute darkness. And somewhere ahead, something began singing, a little girl's lullaby, the same lullaby they had heard on the radio. Only this time, it wasn't coming from Emily. It was coming from the forest itself. The singing stopped, so suddenly, it almost felt as though someone had pressed a switch. Thomas eased his foot off the accelerator. The old Ford ambulance continued rolling slowly through the narrow logging road. The headlights barely reached 30 feet ahead. Everything beyond that disappeared into darkness. No rain, no wind, not even insects. For the first time in Thomas Walker's 16-year career, the silence frightened him more than the dead body behind him. David looked through the passenger window. "I've driven all over Oregon. I've never seen this road." Thomas nodded. Neither had he. The county map still lay open across the dashboard. According to it, They were driving through solid forest. No logging road. No abandoned settlement. Nothing. Yet the ambulance continued following a perfectly maintained dirt road. Almost as if someone wanted them to find it. Emily suddenly looked toward the windshield. Her expression changed. Until now, she had looked frightened. Now, she looked confused. Very quietly, she whispered, "This wasn't here before." Thomas glanced into the mirror. What wasn't? She slowly pointed ahead. The church. Around the next bend, the headlights illuminated a small wooden church. It stood completely alone in the middle of the forest. No cemetery, no houses, no road leading anywhere else. Just a white church, built sometime around the early 1900s. Its paint had almost completely peeled away. The cross on top leaned sideways. Several stained glass windows had been broken, yet warm yellow light glowed from inside. David frowned. Someone's here. Thomas wasn't convinced. The church looked abandoned, except light flickered behind every window, as though dozens of candles burned inside. The ambulance rolled past the front entrance. Thomas immediately noticed something strange. There wasn't a single vehicle outside. Not one. No tire tracks. No footprints. Yet the front door stood wide open. The yellow light spilled across the muddy ground. Emily suddenly stepped backward. Her face turned pale. No! Thomas looked into the mirror. What is it? She shook her head violently. Don't stop. At that exact moment, the ambulance engine coughed. Once, twice, then died. Again. The vehicle rolled to a stop directly in front of the church. Thomas slammed his hand against the steering wheel. No! He turned the ignition. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The engine refused to start. The church bell rang. One slow, deep, metallic tone. Boom. The sound echoed through the trees. Then, another. Boom. David looked toward the open church door. I don't like this, Thomas whispered. We're not getting out. Then, a man appeared inside the doorway. An elderly priest, at least 70 years old. Long gray beard, black robe, small lantern in one hand, large wooden cross in the other. He slowly walked toward the ambulance. Unlike everything else that night, he looked completely normal. He stopped beside Thomas's window, then gently knocked. 3 times. Thomas lowered the window only an inch. The old priest smiled kindly. You boys look lost. His voice sounded human, warm, normal. For the first time in hours, Thomas almost relaxed. The priest looked toward the rear compartment. His smile disappeared. You've brought her. Thomas felt his stomach tighten. You know her? The old man slowly nodded. I've been waiting. David frowned. Waiting. For 38 years. Thomas exchanged a confused glance with David. Emily was only 9 years old. 38 years made no sense. The priest quietly continued. She's not the first. And she won't be the last. Emily suddenly screamed. A terrified scream. The first real emotion they'd heard from her. No! Don't let him touch me. Thomas spun around. Emily had backed into the far corner of the ambulance, clutching the rabbit tightly, her entire body trembling. She looked absolutely terrified. The old priest slowly closed his eyes, then whispered, She can still see him. Thomas froze. See who? The priest opened his eyes. Very calmly, he answered, The man behind your ambulance. Neither Thomas nor David moved. Very slowly, the priest lifted his lantern. Its warm light illuminated the road behind them. Standing no more than 20 feet away was the tall figure in black, completely motionless, hat covering his face, arms hanging unnaturally low. For the first time, Thomas could actually see him clearly, and something immediately felt wrong. He wasn't standing on the road. His feet weren't touching the ground. He floated, only inches above the mud. The priest quietly stepped backward. He cannot enter holy ground. Thomas immediately looked toward the church, then back toward the figure. The man in black remained perfectly still. just outside an invisible line, as though something prevented him from coming closer. The priest spoke again. "You have only one chance. Bring the child inside." David immediately reached for the rear door handle. Before he could move, Emily screamed again. "Liar!" Her tiny voice echoed through the ambulance. "He's lying. Don't let him in." The priest slowly turned toward the rear doors. His face changed. For less than a second, his warm smile disappeared. His eyes became completely black. Not dark, not shadow, pure black. Then, they returned to normal. Thomas saw it. David saw it. Neither man said a word. The priest smiled once more. This time, it didn't feel human, and Thomas realized there might be something even more dangerous than the man in black. For nearly 10 seconds, no one moved. The old priest remained standing in the rain, holding the lantern, smiling, waiting. Thomas couldn't stop thinking about what he'd just seen. Those eyes, for one brief moment, they hadn't been human. They'd been completely black, as though there was nothing behind them. No soul, no life, only darkness. David quietly leaned closer. "Did you see it?" Thomas answered without looking away. "Yeah, the eyes." David nodded. "I saw." Neither man spoke again. The priest continued smiling, patiently, as though he already knew exactly what they were going to do. Emily had retreated into the far corner beside the oxygen cabinet. She held the stuffed rabbit so tightly that one of its ears nearly tore off. Tears streamed silently down her face. For the first time, she looked exactly like what she truly was, a terrified little girl. Not a ghost, not a monster, just a frightened child. She looked directly at Thomas, then slowly whispered, "Please, don't leave me with him." Thomas made his decision. He rolled the driver's window down another inch. The priest immediately stepped closer. Thomas raised one hand. "Stay where you are." The priest stopped. His smile never faded. Thomas asked, "If you're really a priest, what's your name?" The old man answered immediately, "Father Michael." "What church?" "St. Matthew's." Thomas frowned. He'd worked throughout Washington County for 16 years. He knew every church, every hospital, every funeral home. There had never been a St. Matthew's church on this road. David quietly reached beneath the dashboard. Every ambulance carried a county emergency directory. He flipped rapidly through the pages. Churches, parishes, county clergy, hospitals. Nothing. No St. Matthew's. No Father Michael. He looked at Thomas. Almost imperceptibly, he shook his head. Thomas turned back toward the priest. "Funny. I've never heard of St. Matthew's." The priest's smile widened. "You've never needed to." Lightning flashed overhead. For a split second, the lantern's warm light disappeared, and Thomas saw something standing inside the church behind the priest. Not people. Figures. Dozens of them, standing perfectly still inside the pews. Everyone dressed in black. Everyone facing the ambulance. None of them had faces, just smooth, featureless heads. The lightning vanished. The church looked normal again. Emily suddenly screamed, "Drive!" The ambulance engine, which had refused to start for nearly 5 minutes, suddenly roared to life by itself. Thomas didn't hesitate. He slammed the transmission into drive. The ambulance lurched forward. Mud sprayed behind the tires. The priest never tried to stop them. He simply watched, still smiling, still holding the lantern, until the church disappeared behind the trees. No one spoke for almost 15 minutes. The forest seemed endless. Thomas finally broke the silence. "Emily." She slowly looked up. "You said that church wasn't here before." She nodded. "It wasn't." "What do you mean?" "When Daddy drove this road, there wasn't any church." Thomas frowned. "When?" Emily answered so casually, it sent chills through both men. "Every time." David slowly turned around. "What do you mean every time?" Emily looked confused. "As long as I can remember, we always drove this road." Thomas interrupted. "To go where?" She answered, To visit Mommy. Thomas exchanged a glance with David. The paperwork clearly listed that Emily lived with both parents. Something wasn't matching anymore. David carefully asked, "Emily, where is your mother now?" The little girl smiled sadly. "She died." Thomas nearly hit the brakes. "What?" Emily continued. "She died when I was 4. Silence filled the ambulance. Thomas remembered seeing the family photograph over the fireplace. Father, mother, Emily, smiling together, couldn't have been taken after the mother's death. Unless Emily wasn't remembering things correctly, or someone else wasn't telling the truth. The dispatcher suddenly came over the radio. Crystal clear. No static. Unit 12. David almost shouted with relief. "Dispatch! Thank God! We need immediate assistance." The dispatcher sounded confused. "Assistance? You're already at the morgue." Thomas and David froze. "What?" David looked out the windshield. Still forest. Still darkness. No buildings. No city lights. Nothing. Dispatch continued. "County morgue confirms you've been parked outside for 11 minutes. Thomas's heart nearly stopped. They had never reached the morgue. Not even close. David grabbed the microphone tighter. "Listen to me. We're in the forest. We've been driving for over an hour." The dispatcher became silent, then quietly replied, "Unit 12. Who is Thomas talking to?" David slowly lowered the microphone. Thomas looked at him. "What?" David swallowed. "Dispatch. Said you're talking." Thomas frowned. "I haven't said a word." David stared at him. "You've been talking for the last 10 minutes. Thomas felt the blood leave his face. "What did I say?" David answered in almost a whisper. "You kept saying, 'She's sitting beside me.'" Thomas slowly turned toward the passenger seat. David had been sitting there the entire time, but for just one heartbeat, he saw someone else, a little blonde girl, looking out the windshield, smiling quietly. Then she was gone. David was sitting exactly where he'd always been, still staring at him, terrified. And from the rear compartment, Emily's frightened voice echoed once more. "Don't believe everything you see anymore." Thomas's breathing became shallow. His hands trembled against the steering wheel. For nearly 20 seconds, he couldn't remember the last 10 minutes. Nothing. Not a single second. It was as if someone had cut those memories out of his mind. David slowly reached toward him. "Thomas, look at me." Thomas turned. "You swear?" "I was talking?" David nodded. "You never stopped." "What did I say?" David hesitated, then quietly answered. "You kept asking someone, 'Are you cold?' Then, 'Don't worry.' Then," David swallowed. "You said, 'I'll take you home.'" Thomas felt his stomach tighten. He had absolutely no memory of saying any of it. Emily suddenly whispered from the rear compartment. "He can borrow people." Thomas looked back. "What?" She hugged the rabbit tighter. "Not forever. Only little pieces." David frowned. "Borrow?" Emily nodded. "Memories. Voices. Faces. If you look at him too long, he starts using you." Neither paramedic spoke, because deep inside, both men already knew. Thomas had looked directly at the man in black. Twice, the ambulance continued through the endless forest. For another 15 minutes, nothing happened. No voices, no footsteps, no strange figures, only silence. It almost felt normal again. Thomas finally began convincing himself perhaps whatever nightmare they'd entered was ending. Then, David noticed something lying beneath his boots. A small cassette tape, old, gray. The label had faded. Only one word remained handwritten across it. "Emily." David frowned. "Where did this come from?" Thomas glanced down. "I've never seen it." Every ambulance carried an old cassette player for training recordings. David hesitated, then slowly inserted the tape. Thomas immediately shook his head. "David, I don't think." Too late. The tape clicked. Static filled the speakers. For several seconds, nothing. Then, a little girl's laughter. Not frightening, happy, innocent. The recording quality sounded old, probably made on a cheap home recorder. Then, a woman's voice, warm, gentle. "Emily, come here, sweetheart." Another laugh. Then, a man's voice. "You ready for your birthday?" Emily squealed happily. Thomas and David looked at each other. This sounded like a family recording. Completely normal. The tape continued. Children playing. Someone singing. Birthday candles. Cake. For almost 3 minutes, nothing unusual happened. Then, everything changed. The tape suddenly filled with violent static. The little girl stopped laughing. Someone screamed. Glass shattered. Then, Emily cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just terrified. "Mommy!" "Who's that man?" Silence. Then the woman whispered, very quickly, very fearfully, "Emily, don't answer him." The recording became distorted. Something heavy struck the microphone. Then, a man's voice, very deep, very slow, exactly the same voice Thomas had heard outside the ambulance. "Come." The tape immediately stopped. The cassette player automatically ejected it. Neither Thomas nor David touched it. David whispered, "That wasn't possible." Thomas nodded. If the tape belonged to Emily, then she'd recorded that voice long before tonight. Long before they ever met her. Emily quietly spoke. "Mommy made that." Thomas looked into the mirror. "Your mother." Emily nodded. "She wanted Daddy to hear it." "What happened?" Emily looked toward the floor. He never believed her. Thomas felt chills run through his entire body. The story wasn't beginning tonight. It had begun years ago. Suddenly, the ambulance radio came alive again. Dispatch. Clear as day. Unit 12. David grabbed the microphone. "This is Unit 12. The dispatcher sounded relieved. "There you are. We lost you." Thomas immediately asked, "Where are we?" The dispatcher answered, "You're on Black Pine Road." Thomas frowned. Black Pine Road? Neither he nor David had ever heard that name. David unfolded the county map again. Nothing. No Black Pine Road. The dispatcher continued. "Just stay on that road. You'll reach Route 47. Thomas interrupted. "There is no Route 47 near Ashwood." Silence. Then, the dispatcher quietly answered, "There used to be." Static. The radio died. David slowly looked at Thomas. "Did she say, used to be?" Thomas nodded. Neither of them spoke, because both were thinking the same thing. What if they weren't driving through the Oregon of 1988 anymore? The ambulance rounded another bend. Both men instinctively hit the brakes. An entire town appeared before them. Streetlights glowed softly. Old wooden storefronts lined both sides of the road. A gas station, a diner, a barber shop, a movie theater. Everything looked perfect, except there wasn't a single person. Not one. No parked cars. No movement. No sound. The sign at the entrance read, "Welcome to Black Pine. Population, 2,143. Underneath, someone had scratched another message into the metal. The letters looked fresh, as though carved only hours ago. Nobody ever left. Behind them, Emily quietly began crying. Not because of the town, because standing beneath the welcome sign, watching the ambulance enter, was the man in black. And this time, he wasn't following anymore. He was waiting. Thomas instinctively pressed the brake pedal. The ambulance rolled to a stop beneath the weathered welcome sign. The headlights illuminated the words one last time. "Welcome to Black Pine. Population, 2,143. Below it, someone had carved with a knife. Nobody ever left. Rain no longer fell. The air was perfectly still. Even the engine seemed quieter, as if the town itself absorbed every sound. David slowly looked around. Where is everybody? Main Street stretched nearly half a mile ahead. Every business was lit. A diner, a hardware store, a grocery market. a movie theater advertising Rain Man, an old Chevrolet dealership, a pharmacy with a neon sign flickering softly. Everything looked alive, yet nothing moved. Not a single person, not even a stray dog. Thomas checked the dashboard clock. 3:41 a.m. It had shown 3:41 nearly 20 minutes earlier. The second hand wasn't moving. The clock had frozen. David looked at his wristwatch. Mine stopped too. Emily whispered from the rear compartment. Don't stay long. Thomas glanced back. What is this place? Emily looked out the rear window. People came here and forgot how to leave. Thomas slowly drove deeper into town. The ambulance engine echoed between empty brick buildings. Store windows reflected the flashing emergency lights, but something immediately felt wrong. The reflections weren't matching. Thomas frowned. In one shop window, the ambulance reflected correctly. In the next, there were two ambulances. In another, there wasn't any ambulance at all. Only Thomas, driving alone. David noticed it too. Don't look at the glass. Thomas nodded. He fixed his eyes back on the road. Halfway down Main Street, they saw movement. An elderly man, standing beneath the street lamp, wearing an old postal uniform. He wasn't looking at them. He simply stood there, holding a bundle of letters. Thomas slowed. Sir. No response. David opened his door slightly. Excuse me. The old man never moved. Thomas carefully parked the ambulance. I'll talk to him. Emily suddenly shouted. No! Both men froze. She had never raised her voice before. Tears filled her eyes. If he turns around, don't look at his face. Thomas slowly closed the driver's door again. The old postman remained perfectly still. Then, without moving his body, his head slowly rotated. Not naturally, not like a person turning. Continued rotating. 45 degrees, 90, 180, until his face pointed directly toward the ambulance, while his body still faced away. David gasped. The man's face was completely blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth pale skin. Thomas immediately hit the accelerator. The ambulance surged forward. As they passed, the postman quietly lifted one hand and waved. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Then, David whispered, What was he? Emily answered softly, He forgot. Forgot what? Who he was. The road suddenly widened. Ahead stood the town square. In the middle, a large bronze statue. Thomas slowed again. It showed 3 paramedics standing beside an old ambulance. The statue looked strangely familiar. David leaned toward the windshield. Thomas, look at the ambulance. It was identical to theirs. Same model, same paint, same emergency lights, even the unit number, Unit 12. Thomas felt every hair on his neck stand up. A bronze plaque rested beneath the monument. Thomas switched on the spotlight. The engraved letters became visible. In memory of the crew of Unit 12, Thomas Walker, David Collins, who gave their lives while transporting Emily Harper. October 17, 1988. Silence. Neither man breathed. Neither man moved. David slowly climbed out of the ambulance. No! No! This isn't funny. Thomas followed. His flashlight shook violently. He stepped closer to the plaque, ran one trembling finger across the engraved names. His own name, David's name, today's date, their date of death. David whispered, We're not dead. Thomas didn't answer, because deep inside, he wasn't completely sure anymore. Behind them, Emily quietly stepped out of the rear compartment. For the first time, her feet actually touched the ground. She slowly walked toward the monument, stopped beside it, then looked at Thomas. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. This happened before. Thomas frowned. What happened before? She looked directly into his eyes. You almost brought me here. Last time. Thomas felt his heartbeat stop. Last time. Emily nodded. You don't remember. Because he takes memories first. David slowly backed away. Thomas, I think we've been here before. At that exact moment, every light in Black Pine went out. The town disappeared into absolute darkness. Only the ambulance headlights remained. And from somewhere beyond the buildings, footsteps, slow, heavy, getting closer, not running, walking, exactly the same steady pace. The man in black had finally entered the town. The footsteps echoed through the darkness. Slow, heavy, deliberate, one step at a time. Thomas shined his flashlight toward the end of Main Street. Nothing, only darkness swallowing the beam after 20 feet. Yet the footsteps continued. Closer, closer, closer. David backed toward the ambulance. We need to leave. Now, Thomas nodded. Emily, she didn't move. She remained standing before the bronze monument, looking up at their engraved names. Almost sadly, Thomas called again. Emily, she finally turned around. I know how to leave. Thomas felt a surge of hope. You do, she nodded. But he won't let everyone go. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the ambulance radio turned on by itself. Not static, not dispatch, cassette recording. The speakers crackled. Then, a man's voice, older, exhausted. Thomas froze. It was his own voice. My name is Thomas Walker. David slowly looked toward him. That's you. Thomas couldn't speak. The recording continued. If anyone is hearing this, don't stop in Black Pine. No matter what you see, don't believe the church. Don't follow the lights. Thomas felt his knees weaken. The recording wasn't old. It sounded exactly like him. Only older, more tired. The voice continued. If Emily is still with you, protect her. She's the only one who remembers. David whispered. What does he mean? Still with us? The recording crackled again. Thomas listened in complete silence. Then, his own recorded voice said something that made his blood run cold. I've been trapped here for 34 years. Silence. Nobody moved. 34 years? Impossible. Tonight was October 17th. How could he have been trapped for 34 years? The tape continued. Time doesn't move correctly here. Some people stay one night. Others stay forever. If you're hearing this, then I already failed. Emily quietly closed her eyes, as though she'd heard the message before. Thomas slowly looked toward her. You knew. She nodded. I've heard it lots of times. His heart skipped. Lots of times. Emily whispered. You always come. You always try. You always forget. David's face turned white. What does that mean? Emily looked at him sadly. It means this isn't the first time. The footsteps stopped. Somewhere behind the buildings. Complete silence. Then, every streetlight in Black Pine came back on at once. The town looked alive again. Except, this time, people stood everywhere. Hundreds of them. On sidewalks, inside store windows, on rooftops, children, old women, police officers, doctors, truck drivers, families, every one of them standing perfectly still, watching the ambulance, watching Thomas. None of them blinked. Thomas whispered, Who are they? Emily answered, They forgot. David remembered the faceless postman. They're trapped. Emily slowly nodded. They answered him. The ambulance radio crackled again. Thomas's older voice spoke one final time. Listen carefully. The moment he speaks your name, don't answer. A deep voice immediately echoed across the empty town. Not loud, just everywhere, at once. It didn't come from one direction. Came from every building, every window, every shadow. Thomas Walker. Thomas instinctively froze. The voice knew his full name. David grabbed his arm. Don't. Thomas clenched his jaw. The voice repeated itself. Closer this time. Thomas. Behind them, Emily covered her ears. Tears streamed down her face. He found you. The temperature dropped so suddenly that frost spread across the ambulance windshield. Their breath became visible. Store windows cracked. Streetlights flickered. The hundreds of silent townspeople all lowered their heads at exactly the same moment, as though bowing to someone approaching. Then, at the far end of Main Street, the man in black appeared, not walking anymore, standing perfectly still, his face still hidden beneath the old funeral hat. His coat moved, although there was no wind. For the first time, Thomas realized something terrifying. He wasn't holding a weapon. He wasn't chasing anyone. He simply extended one hand toward Emily, like someone calling a lost child home. Emily stepped backward. "No!" The man in black spoke again. Only one sentence. Calm, patient, almost gentle. "Emily, it's time to come home." Emily screamed, and every window in Black Pine exploded at once. Emily's scream echoed across Black Pine. Every window shattered. Thousands of pieces of glass rained onto the empty streets. Then, everything became silent. Not a single sound. Not even the ambulance engine. It was as though time itself had stopped. The man in black slowly lowered his hand. He never rushed, never showed anger. He simply waited, as if he already knew. Everyone eventually chose him. Thomas suddenly remembered something. The cassette. Emily's mother's voice. Don't answer him. Not, don't fight him. Not, run from him. Only, don't answer. That wasn't a warning. It was a rule. Thomas grabbed the dashboard microphone. It wasn't connected anymore. The radio had died hours ago. Still, he pressed the transmit button. Emily. She looked at him. How did you leave him before? Emily's frightened eyes slowly filled with tears. I didn't. Mommy did. Thomas froze. Your mother. Emily nodded. She said, he can't take someone if someone else brings them home. Thomas finally understood. Not the morgue. Not Black Pine. Emily had been trying to tell them the entire night. Home. Not where her body belonged. Where she belonged. Thomas suddenly looked at David. The cemetery. David blinked. What? The family cemetery. The farmhouse. The photograph. Everything started there. David immediately understood. We were never supposed to drive to the morgue. The man in black took one slow step forward. For the first time, Thomas spoke directly to him. Not answering, just speaking. You can't have her. The figure stopped. His head slowly tilted, almost curiously. Emily quietly whispered, Don't let him make you angry. Thomas nodded. I won't. He climbed into the driver's seat. The engine, which had been silent only seconds earlier, started immediately. No hesitation, no struggle. The headlights illuminated the empty street. Thomas slammed the ambulance into reverse. The tires screamed. The vehicle spun around in the middle of Black Pine. The moment it faced the road out of town, every streetlight exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. The man in black didn't chase them. He simply watched, standing beneath the broken welcome sign. Smaller, smaller, until darkness finally hid him completely. The logging road appeared again, exactly where it should have been. Rain returned. Wind returned. The dashboard clock began ticking. 3:42. 3:43. Time was moving again. No voices. No strange radios. No church. No faceless people. Only the road. Only Oregon. 43 minutes later, the Henderson farmhouse appeared through the trees. Sheriff's deputies were still there, exactly where they'd been, as though no time had passed. Thomas slammed on the brakes. Deputy Michael Owens ran toward the ambulance. What happened? You disappeared. Thomas stared at him. How long? The deputy frowned. Maybe 3 minutes. David slowly laughed. Not because anything was funny, because he couldn't believe it. They had spent nearly 2 hours inside Black Pine. Outside, only 3 minutes had passed. Thomas opened the rear doors. Emily still lay peacefully inside the black body bag, exactly where they'd first placed her. She hadn't moved. The stuffed rabbit rested beside her. Thomas stared at it. I thought, David quietly nodded. So did I. The county medical examiner arrived a few minutes later. Thomas asked one question. Where's Emily's mother buried? The examiner looked surprised. She's not. Thomas frowned. What? Mrs. Harper didn't die. She disappeared. In 1981, nobody ever found her. Thomas and David looked at each other. Neither spoke. They finally completed the transport. At 6:18 a.m., Emily Harper officially entered the Multnomah County morgue. No strange voices, no footsteps, no man in black. Everything looked perfectly normal. 3 days later, Thomas couldn't sleep. He drove to the County Historical Society. He asked one question. Was there ever a town called Black Pine? The elderly archivist stared at him for several seconds, then disappeared into the records room. She returned carrying an old newspaper. The headline read, Black Pine erased by fire, November 3rd, 1962. More than 2,000 people had vanished overnight. No bodies were ever recovered. The official report blamed a wildfire. The unofficial report had no explanation. The town was removed from state maps the following spring. Thomas quietly asked, Has anyone ever found it again? The archivist slowly looked up. Every few years, someone says they drove through it. None of them tell the same story. 6 months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Thomas kept working. David transferred to day shift. Neither of them ever mentioned Black Pine again. Not because they'd forgotten, because they were afraid saying its name might somehow bring it back. Then, one rainy October night, Thomas received another body transport. Routine. Female. Young. County Road 18. Nothing unusual. He started the ambulance. Signed the paperwork. Started driving. Halfway down the empty highway, the old radio crackled. Static. Thomas smiled bitterly. Probably another faulty connection. Then, a tiny voice quietly spoke. Exactly as gentle as before. Exactly as innocent. Mr. Walker. Thomas closed his eyes. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. The voice continued, Are you taking me home? Thomas never answered. He simply kept driving, because some promises are kept by saying nothing at all.